Hey everybody, Deborah King. Thanks for joining me at this very last minute. I didn't really, you guys can hear me, right? So I didn't actually think about talking about this until this morning. Like you were probably wherever you are in the world, whether you're in the US or you're international, you were probably just as shocked as I was about what happened yesterday. And you've probably been thinking about it all night, like I have been, trying to wrap my head around it. Um, and so that's really what I want to talk about today, and but perhaps try to shed a new light on how did we get to that kind of violence in our nation's capital. It's such a disturbing turn of events, huh? So, yesterday was such a dark day, wasn't it? And I can't even seem to put words together for all of it. We sat and watched on TV as a real mob of seditionists, laid siege to our capital. Our capital. We think of it as a temple, right, to democracy, and it was defiled. It was invaded, and there's no other word for that except an insurrection. So I know you're just as shocked as I am. Really a bleak day for the whole world. Now, it has always been my policy never to be political um, in public because that isn't part of what I'm here for. I'm here to teach in the spiritual realm, and you and I may have different opinions, and that's okay. I wouldn't want differences of opinion to invalidate your healing process. That's my function. My goal, above all, is to help you personally heal. That's my training. That's my vocation. And so I set aside my politics, and you do too. And we come together to find a spirituality and strength and self empowerment. But yesterday wasn't about differences of opinion. Yesterday was a real attack on all of us. Hold on just a second. I'm getting some cross talk here. Um, Yesterday was really a violent attack, and on the truths that we all most believe in. It's a real traumatic wound on the soul of our country. And as I've dedicated my whole life to helping people heal, I'd be doing a real disservice, wouldn't I, to you and to myself if I didn't look at this attack as I would any other and think, well, it's a trauma, and my function is to professionally help heal traumas, and let's get to the root of this trauma, this darkness, and discover how we can remedy it. So again, that's my subject today. And yesterday when I turned on the news, and I didn't really have time for it yesterday, but I was very drawn to it. You probably were too. I saw scenes of carnage that are truly incompatible with American life. We are a democracy. We vote. Our votes matter. We respect the results of our votes, even when we're not happy. It happens all the time, right? From the time we're in grammar school and high school, we wanted to win the election and we didn't, or we wanted our friend to win and they didn't. But we understand. We accept the results of voting. We may disagree, we may protest, we may speak publicly and forcefully, as I hope I am today. We may engage in peaceful protest. I have. I presume you have too, meaningful protest. And so many other Americans and people around the globe have done the same thing. But we don't override the mechanisms, the very mechanisms of what creates our freedom, no matter the rationale. So we have to ask ourselves, how in the world did we get here? And, after the insurrection was quelled, I couldn't go to sleep last night. I watched that thing. I imagine you did too, pretty late, watching Congress. And I heard a lot of really brave men and women say, this is not us. This is not America. This is not who we are. And they're right. What they really mean is, this is not what we were raised to value. But the point remains, the people who perpetuated this atrocity yesterday, they're Americans. We're embarrassed to admit it, but they are. It's really unfortunate. They are some of us. They're not all of us, but they are some of us. Now, I don't know a lot about history. I was never really very good at history, frankly, not my favorite subject. But I know a little bit about history. I know enough to know that this didn't happen overnight. This didn't happen in a vacuum. Somehow we invited this. If you think back to America historically, we had a civil war. That's pretty violent. And that's where a group of people took up arms against the federal government to preserve their right to own other people. Just think about that for a minute. My ancestors are from the South. Actually, General Lee is fourth cousin, and that's a real wound on our soul, right? The goal to own others. You can't even wrap your head around it, right? So yesterday, some people took up arms against the same government because they weren't happy about the results of a lawful election. That's not democracy, that's assault. So again, how in the world did we get here? So, if you think about it, there are three types of people in a violent situation. There's the perpetrator, there's those who fight back, and then there's those who are complicit. We can call them the enablers. And I want to talk about the enablers today, and I'm ashamed to count myself among them. So if you just step back for a moment, I'll give you an example. It's really from my heart. This is an example I lived through. Let's think about violence in the household. Okay, so here you have a father, a pretty good man, right? Like my father, a strong man, a good provider, brought home the bacon, provided a good home, put us kids in good schools. We had the best toys. My mother had the finest clothes. So on the surface, everything looked really neat and tidy, right? And very orderly. But let's suppose this father can't control his temper. I'll use kind of a classic example. And every time a child in the family does something that father believes is wrong, forgets to put a toy away or forgets to say, yes, sir, it's a pretty strong household, the child gets beaten. Now the mother, she hates this, of course, and she's secretly just horrified. And she blots your cut with iodine, and she puts ice on your bruise, but she doesn't leave him. How could she leave? He's the provider, right? How could she afford to care for you in the manner to which she's accustomed, and so are you? And her husband hasn't hit her. That's another rationale. So what does she do? She turns a blind eye, right? She plays it down. She says to herself, well, he's really not a bad man. He just does a bad thing once in a while, blah, blah, blah. You can hear this, right? She dismisses it. She tells the kids, well, don't talk back to daddy next time, and that won't happen. He still loves you. You might have lived through something like this. I certainly did. Now, I loved my mother, but she turned a blind eye to the pain that was occasioned by my father, who I adored, but who put me through terrible situations. And I've spent the rest of my life, many decades now, working on that pain, trying to heal that wound. So when someone turns a blind eye to someone else's pain, what they're doing is twofold. First, they're rationalizing the abuse. It's the first thing you have to do, right? You have to not feel bad about the choice you're making to allow it. And second, they are consciously or unconsciously making a decision that the benefit is greater than the pain inflicted. So, my mother would have said, my house, my position in the community, my prestige is all more important than what's happening to my daughter or my son. Now, when you hear that, you might be horrified, right? You might think, this is terrible. But if you ask yourself hard questions here, truthfully, you have to say to yourself, how often have I been just that complicit? So ask yourself these questions. How often have you, for example, maybe you've worked in an office situation at some point in your life, how often have you sat back at the office and watched as a colleague of yours wrongfully took credit for someone else's work? That's really common. Or how often have you ignored and swept under the rug the fact that you knew a coworker was being sexually assaulted? That's really common. Or racially profiled, and you don't want to say anything, right? You don't want to jeopardize your own job. Or maybe you're friends with the guy who's doing the racial profiling. Or take your family. My first example. How often do we tell ourselves when we see something bad happening in the family, oh, it's none of my business? I just did this recently. Just last year, I squelched my urge to confront a family member who I really liked, who I knew was bullying another family member. I told myself it was none of my business. Really, I should have said something. I didn't, because I didn't want to create a fuss. And let's be honest, I didn't want to be unliked by yet another family member. I'm down to so few, but it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. I'm telling you about my behavior so you can take a good look at your own. How often have we sat back as a friend was criticized unfairly or excluded or marginalized from the group, right? The group, and we've excused our silence. We've said, oh, none of my business, or I don't want to rock the boat, or, it's a business deal. I don't want to say anything. Or my favorite, I have a relative who always says, oh, I was just kidding. Right. He isn't kidding. He's really hurting someone. So, have we all sat back a lot? Haven't we? Right? Let's just call a spade here. I don't care what political party you're in. We've been watching the supposed leader of the free world, who's a bully. The guy's a sexual predator. He's a racist, and he's a liar. And we've tolerated this behavior. Now he's an insurrectionist. And we've just been turning a blind eye. Well, number one, it didn't affect us personally. Probably not, right? Not you and your home and your life. You might have benefited financially when I queried my family about how in the world they could justify voting again for this bully. They said, well, yeah, but our taxes got lowered. I'll tell you why I never said anything. I worried that if I spoke up, I might lose your friendship, or the few relatives that I still have that are speaking to me. Last year, I had an interesting experience. Do you remember George Floyd? Well, I got all stirred up about that, and quite innocently, I went on my Facebook page right here on Facebook, and I said, Black Lives Matter. I had no idea that in the next hour, 2,000 people unliked me. My God, I had no idea that someone who liked my page, who perhaps wanted to meditate with me or study energy healing with me or receive spiritual guidance from me, would think it was okay for someone to stand on a man's neck while we all watched on national television and until he was dead. I could not figure out how you and I could not be in agreement on that one. It just didn't seem to me as a controversial remark, but it was chilling for me because, of course, I started to turn probably even more of a blind eye, right, as situations unfolded this year, and as we as a country watched more and more of this kind of behavior, because no one wanted to stand up and be counted. None of us did. None of us. So at the Capitol yesterday, the logical conclusion of enough people who turned a blind eye played out in real time, right? With really, really deadly consequences. Now, I saw a lot of politicians say yesterday, this is not who we are. And I think, well, okay, you didn't participate. You weren't out there on the grounds breaking windows with a rock or setting off a pipe bomb or doing any of those things. But did you enable this behavior? Did you turn a blind eye? So let me change my choice of words. Maybe blind eye is a weak expression. Maybe closed eye. Maybe that's more apt. A blind eye, that implies that we cannot see, right? But a closed eye, that's what I was doing. It means I chose not to see, like my mother chose not to see. That's really what I've been doing, and maybe what you've been doing. So a lot of us, Americans, and others around the world who are under similar kinds of dictatorships, they choose not to see because what's implicitly building for years, it's just so ugly and awkward to get involved. Your family may not like you, your boss may not like your position. I mean, it could cause you trouble. So let's go back to these otherwise good politicians. They chose not to see because it helped them get reelected. Let's face it. They chose not to see because it helped them get policies enabled that they preferred, get things enacted. But the result's all the same. We choose not to see. Now, I know that's upsetting, and I understand that. I'm not saying that getting elected or getting your policies passed is implicitly bad. It's not at all. We all have things we want, right? My mother wanted a nice house. She wanted security, so she stayed married to a bully. Some did what they had to do so they'd get reelected. It only becomes immoral when you accept darkness as the path to achieving the goal. But if there's one thing I've learned in my life thus far, is that when you close your eyes to a bully, you are accepting darkness, and it does nothing except embolden the behavior of a bully. You might have already experienced this in your life. I certainly have. It's not a new concept, right? You've heard the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And, that's a way of accepting darkness. What we're saying is, it doesn't directly affect me. I'm not directly part of it. So we have all these excuses. So we need to care. We really need to care here. Serving as an enabler, which is what I was doing, it's a temporary position. This is the really interesting thing. When you're an enabler, your position is going to be brief. It's untenable. You either become consumed by the darkness until you're the same guy as the bully, or the bully turns on you and you become the next victim. It's just fascinating. Again, now I don't know a lot about history, but I do remember what Prime Minister Chamberlain said during the ramp up to World War II. He decided to agree to Hitler's demands for a big chunk of Czechoslovakia. He thought, oh, this will satisfy Hitler's hunger, it'll satiate it. He had this territorial hunger. And Chamberlain then declared that he had, quote, achieved peace in our times. Well, boy, was he wrong. He couldn't have been farther from the truth. Britain, if you'll think back, soon found itself in a gigantic war. And Churchill, who succeeded Chamberlain, he was the one who laid out the reality. You may remember what he said. He said, you cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth. So Hitler was a bully. Chamberlain and a lot of people who agreed with him, they believed if they gave Hitler what he wanted, if they appeased him, he'd be satisfied and he'd quit behaving that way. What a joke. He didn't stop bullying. They were really mistaken, weren't they? A bully's never satisfied. A bully eventually comes after you, the enabler. That's what we saw yesterday at the Capitol. Many who enabled this bully by turning a closed eye, they found themselves at the other end of the violence. All the congressmen and women. A good friend said to me this morning, well, those congressmen and women, now they know what it feels like when you're a small business owner in someplace, say like Portland, right? Where your store's been burned to the ground and it's all in the name of peaceful protest. Now, this isn't what she meant, but in fact, if we had been braver back in Portland and had made sure that those Proud Boys were stopped dead in their tracks and put in jail where they belonged, maybe we wouldn't have had this happen at the Capitol. So all you do when you back up and allow a bully to proceed is you embolden their action. You give them power. They are really actually very weak people. A bully is nothing more. I'm going to segue into a system I teach right now. They're a psychopath in the sense of, I'm talking about characterology right now. That's one of the types. And it's kind of ironic that in 2008, my first book was published, Truth Heals. And when I was looking for the perfect psychopathic representation, I chose Trump. It was very innocent. Back then, he was just a asshole on TV, okay? Excuse my French. And I thought, oh God, he's the perfect psychopath. He's got the inflated chest, the disempowered legs. He's very weak below here. He's all he's all steam and nothing really underneath. He's got the big red face. And I thought, oh, he's the perfect personification of a bully. And I was really thought that my publisher would pull that section and tell me that I couldn't talk about a living figure, because usually they don't allow you to. But I added a footnote that I thought he would probably be flattered to be called that, and I was right. So they didn't eliminate it from the copy. When you watch a bully, like we have been watching, tell us, I mean, there was no joke. He told us ahead of time what he was going to do. He was going to jail his political opponents and invalidate an election. And thinking that if we humored him, it would soon be over and, we could all recover from this insanity. We're wrong. We're wrong. You embolden a bully, they have an insurrection. That's what's next. This is not about conservatism versus liberals. Again, I'm an independent. I spent more time on Fox News, actually, when it comes to national news, than I have any other, way more than I was ever invited to be on CNN. I was always on Fox News because Fox News liked my shtick because I talked about family values, and back in the day, they were big on that. So we had a great deal in common. This isn't about your values. This isn't about conservatism versus liberalism. It is not. I have great respect for many conservative values. They're very decent and worthy of pursuit. I have a long and noble background in the business world, where probably every single one of my clients was very conservative, because that's typical, okay, for business people. That is not about that. This is about democracy versus a despot. This is a very, very dangerous situation, and we all have to just come to grips with it and put our politics aside. We have to say to ourselves, how did we get here? How did we get to this level of insanity? Now, not everyone turned a closed eye. Not everyone participated. There have been a lot of really brave people who stood up to this brand of darkness, and they've called a spade a spade. They've said, you know what, this is a threat, and they fought back. And I don't want to discount that. I want to applaud it. Lots of people on both sides of the aisle have said, no, this is unacceptable. And some of these people have put their words into actions. I want to really applaud Mitt Romney. He's actually pretty much a man that we should look at and respect. He's a Republican senator from Utah. I know everybody teases a lot because he's Mormon, but I grew up with Mormons and I really respect them. Talk about family values. They really live theirs out. He was the only man in his party who stood up to Trump and voted against him in the Senate trial, if you think back. And here's what he said. This is a direct quote. He said, I support a great deal of what the president has done. I voted with him 80% of the time. But my promise before God to apply impartial justice required that I put my personal feelings and biases aside, were I to ignore the evidence that's been presented here in this Senate hearing and disregard what I believe my oath and the Constitution demands of me for the sake of a partisan end, it would, I fear, expose my character to history's rebuke and my own conscience. Wow. That is really impressive. And in fact, the more I look at Romney over the years, all the way back to when he was governor of Massachusetts, I'm really impressed with the guy. And he's just one of many really brave politicians and activists and officials who put their careers and lives on the line. When you're dealing with a bully of this magnitude, you understand he has ruined a lot of people's lives, a lot of people. Look at the brave men of the Lincoln Project. If you haven't read about them or stumbled on them here in the last 6 months or a year, you should check them out. They are Republicans who fully sacrificed their lives and their careers to stand up to this bullying. It was really brave of them. And really, they stood up when no one else was willing to. Now, lots of people are, of course. And last night, our democracy, and with it, our sense of justice has just been attacked. But justice and democracy, I promise you, they will prevail. So as we all know, law enforcement was able to repulse the insurrection. Congress was able to execute its duty. All they had to do was count the votes. It's not very tricky. I was really heartened, and I stayed up late to see it, to have politicians on both sides condemn this anti-democratic attack. Vice President Pence did. Senator Chuck Schumer said, he said, democracy will triumph, as it has for many centuries. most of the Republican senators who previously voiced their support for the president, they turned on their heels yesterday and came running, as they should have. Senator Langford, for example, who was speaking when the mob attacked, he changed his speech when he came back in. And he said, we may disagree on a lot of things, and we have a lot of spirited debate here in this room, but we talk it out, we honor each other. And even in our disagreements, that person is not my enemy. That's my fellow American. And while we disagree on things and disagree strongly at times, we never encourage what happened today, ever. So good for him. Good for him. So ask yourself, what happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. All of our eyes were forced open. We can't turn a blind eye when we're literally under attack. That's us, we. And we need to take a side. We need to stand up and be counted. I can't be complicit. I can't sit here in silence. I have to tell you, we cannot enable this level of darkness. If I do, I'm part of the darkness. It's that simple. So I'm so glad that I saw so many yesterday who had been enablers finally say enough is enough. Enough is enough. I heard that said over and over again. But what my concern is, how could it have to get this bad for enough to be enough? And we had to get to the point of a coup for some to say, no, I draw the line at that. I mean, you're breaking the building down and I'm running for my life and being sequestered in a safe place because you might, there was a desire to kill these political figures, to kill them. Or as the saying goes, you cannot reason with the tiger when your head is in its mouth. Okay, back to that quote. So many Americans have had their head in the mouth of the tiger for years, for decades, really, right? Millions of us found ourselves with our head in the mouth yesterday. We felt that fear. You should have resonated with the fear that those congressmen and women had yesterday. And we have our eyes open now, right? So where do we go from here? Well, the first thing I would say is we've got to believe people. Believe people when they say that there's a tiger. Don't say, oh, he or she's not really a bully. They don't really mean it. They just dressed up like one today. It's just to get a better ratings on their TV show. Let's not buy into that anymore. The tiger's teeth are sharp, and we don't say to someone, oh, you shouldn't put your head so close to the tiger. We should believe people. We should really believe people when there's a tiger in our midst. And to those of you who are struggling to deal with what happened yesterday, I want you to understand that I recognize your pain. It's valid. We are Americans, and our country was attacked by other Americans. Our values were desecrated. That's real pain. Don't ignore it. Don't chastise yourself for being complicit. You heard me. I'm done chastising myself, right? Now, instead of being complicit, I'll stand up and be counted. Because we were all collectively assaulted, every single one of us. Your values were assaulted just as mine. I don't care where you stand politically. Your values were assaulted. Your values of living in this democracy were assaulted. And of course, if you participated in this assault at some level, I urge you to stop and think about the damage. I remember saying to I have a nephew I just adore, and I said to him just a few months ago, I said, well, it was November. I said to him, but what about the democracy? Isn't it more important? And boy, that day he didn't think so, but I bet he does today. We've spent 250 years building this robust democracy, and we don't want to sacrifice that. Or lives. That's darkness. That's immorality. Yesterday was January 6th. It was the Epiphany. I wrote about it, and that's the day the Christians celebrate the day that the Magi found Christ. I love that whole story, and you see the camels in the desert, and you see them looking at the star. I'm pretty sure it's a realistic story. Well, Epiphany means the manifestation of a divine being. That's what it means. And it also means the sudden realization of a really powerful truth. I had an epiphany, right? We say that, huh? So yesterday, two powerful forces manifested. The darkness manifested, demagoguery, as did the light. the light of freedom, the light of democracy, the rule of law. And there was also, I think, the realization of a super powerful truth that morals matter. Personal gain cannot be at the expense of morality. We've all been sticking our head in the sand now for how many years? 4, I guess, or 5, pretending that immorality didn't matter. But it does. It doesn't matter if it's in the house, in your home, in a relationship, in the office, or even in our country's highest offices. Morals matter. It's the light that I'm talking about, morals. And I urge all of us to really reflect on the devastating and scary events of yesterday, as well as the powerful triumph of the light over the darkness. So hold that truth to be self-evident, that light wins. And when does light win? Light wins when we embody it, when we do. So from here on out, join with me. Let's all together be braver, stronger, and more willing to stand up and be counted. Stand up and be part of the light. Let's be willing to forcefully call out a bully's behavior to his face. I might agree with that bully's politics, but I got to tell you, bully, you can't behave that way. You can't. Let's be ready to call out a sexual abuser right to his face. Right to his face. He might be the most important film god or producer or whatever, but you call him what he is. He's a sexual abuser. Same thing with a liar. I'm so tired of listening to lies. I am so tired of it. Or an insurrectionist. We need to call this out right to their face. Or we are enabling that darkness. We are. I shudder when I think of all the times with this particular bully. He's an abuser, he's a bigot, he's a liar. And I've said nothing. I just swept it under the rug. I said, soon he'll be out of office, not to worry, this too shall pass. Started with the lies about the last president's birth certificate. It seemed harmless at the time. I thought it was a joke, right? I thought it was part of a TV pitch, frankly. I cringed when I saw him mock that disabled man. That has bothered me ever since. How could you on television make fun of a disabled journalist with using your own, mocking him, mimicking him? Oh, it was disgusting. It was beyond disgusting. I stuck my head in the sand when all those women came forward and accused him. I mean, there's 16 or 18 of them, and credibly claimed unconscionable acts of sexual violence and assault. I, who stand for women against sexual assault, I didn't say a word. And he's running around and relishing how he can grab him by the pussy. I didn't say anything. I don't remember saying much there. I looked the other way when on national TV, he said, "Russia, are you listening?" That's treason. I don't remember writing a blog about that. I kept my mouth shut when he called our World War I troops, he called them suckers because they had died. Oh, how about when he conspired with a foreign government to corrupt our election? I remember being very quiet about that. And then there's Charlottesville. Oh, when he called those white supremacists and neo-Nazis, he called them very fine people. I didn't even raise an eyebrow when he called John McCain a man I really admire, and I bet you do too. He called him a loser. Oh, these things are so disgusting, aren't they? And I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. You want to know why? I was worried about my relationship with you. I didn't want you not to like me. I didn't want to hurt our relationship. Isn't that pathetic? What if I offended you? What if I offended my family? I'm here to help you heal. Let's be honest. My motives were not commendable. They were not commendable. I was turning a blind eye to real assaults on all of us, on our morals, on what we stand for, on we as a people. I was an enabler. I was as much enabling his behavior as maybe you. So let me be clear. These actions, they're a big deal. I will never enable again. If you don't like me for what I say, that's okay. That's okay. I will do everything in my power to validate your pain and help you through a trauma. I will. That's really my job. But we need to heal ourselves from this trauma right now. We've got to be brave, every single one of us, from the top down and the bottom up. So I'm here. I'm putting myself out in front, putting myself on the line. I'm asking you, be brave with me. Let's all acknowledge wherever we've been complicit, in our home, in our work, in our church, in our groups, wherever you go in life. Let's all agree we will not be complicit again. We will never be complicit with a bully or an aggressor or a liar or a sexual predator. Never again, without regard to our politics, beyond our politics. This is beyond politics. This is beyond religion. It is. So as we saw last night, I was so proud of those congressmen and women on both sides of the aisle. I was so proud of them. Let's stand up with them. Let's all move toward the light together. Thank you for listening. Some of you might want to comment. Just raise your hand if you'd like to. You can see I got pretty warmed up to this topic. Any hands in the air? Linda Richards. Hi, Linda. Let me get you unmuted there. So Linda's one of our Canadian guests. So she'll have an interesting perspective from beyond our borders. Where are you, Linda? I did this at very last minute. I didn't think to do this till really the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep. I found this so, here you go, Linda. You're muted on your side, Linda. I found this so upsetting. I actually couldn't sleep last night. I just kind of wandered around and thought about my simplicity.
Thank you, Deborah, so much.
Welcome.
I appreciate your words. I didn't know anything about this until I went home last night, and then I was glued to the television. And I've thought so much about this. You know, this has started many, many years ago with the words that we talk to each other, how we talk to each other. We've become so hard-hearted or close-hearted. In order to get up in the world, we have to put everybody, what they say to us, on the back burner. But yesterday, when this happened, I think what happened, like for me, was the people in the Senate actually feared for their life. And they needed to change and work to take this guy out. But we also, as people, need to start speaking and debating things respectfully. And like you said, when somebody does something wrong, call them out and open our hearts, because it's our hearts that are closed to protect us from all the words that everybody uses against us to put us down so that we can't get ahead in the world. At least that's what I think.
Well, great. Thank you for your comments, Linda. From snowy Canada.
Cold, snowy Canada.
Canada. I see another hand in the air. Is it Daisy, or is it the gentleman behind you, Daisy? You have to unmute on your side. There you go. Hi. Where are you? Where are you, Daisy?
We're in San Diego, California. This is my boyfriend, Yusuf. He's close to all the news and he's so excited. He want to participate.
Wonderful.
Hi, Deborah. This is Dr. Justin. I'm thankful that I heard you giving comments about what happened yesterday. I was waiting. I was expecting you would talk earlier, but thank you so much that you talked about that. You honestly mentioned all the aspects of what's going on between every single of us, inside and outside. I've been following the news since 8 years ago, mostly. Before that, much more, but 8 years ago. And I was expecting that this kind of events will happen in the United States. Beginning of last year, I got messages through my guides that this kind of event will happen, and I got some dates on that, and I was expecting that would happen.
Mhm.
And my
Very-
friend college and telling them, we have to speak out. Everybody has to speak out, because if something immoral, we as a human have responsibility. We have
Otherwise,
responsibility.
we're just like them. We're countenancing the behavior. We might as well be mimicking the disabled journalist ourselves if we don't say anything.
Exactly. And I remember I'm a Muslim, so I remember.
Oh, the Muslim ban. I forgot to mention that.
So I remember the Prophet Muhammad years ago, more than 1,000 years ago. He said, if you see something immoral and you don't speak, you will be one of them.
Right. That's my whole point.
Yeah. One day, those people you have supporting, or you are not speaking against, they will come back to you and they will suppress you. So you have to speak out no matter what, even though if you lose your popularity or your job, of your or your even your life,
Right.
because that's our value as a human, and we need to speak up and stand for that.
Well, wonderful to meet you, Joseph, and thank you for your point of view. Nice to be in sunny San Diego, huh?
Yes.
Wow. Glad to hear from you. Natalie has her hand in the air. Hi, Natalie. Wait a minute, you're muted. I think on your side. Where'd you go, Natalie? I've lost her. Anybody see her? She's still there? I think Natalie fell off trying to unmute herself. Is there another hand in the air here, or let me look around a little bit. Marcia? It's Marcia, right? You're muted. Here, let's get you unmuted. Hold on. There you go. Hi, where are you, Marcia?
I'm in Austin, Texas, and I am thankful. Thank you for your comments and for really bringing it down to the personal, for us to realize. I have been afraid this whole last 4 years that something like this was going to be happening. And
I wish I'd been that forward thinking. I can't say I was.
Well, I was raised in a political family, and I actually studied. I have one of my degrees is history and political science. So that was and I even worked in Washington as a young student intern back when I was in college. And the sexual assault stuff. I mean, I had congressmen calling me that were the age of my father, and I went, oh no, I can't work here. So, but
You participate. Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I just thank you so much for stepping forward, and you just earned huge amounts of respect from me. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I almost stepped forward probably half a dozen times in the last year, but I kept stopping myself. I thought, no, it's not. I can't talk about this. It has to be spiritual, but my God, our morality is tanking, and our country's. Yeah. I have to stand up and be counted, no matter the cost.
Yeah.
Natalie, here you are. You want to speak? Thank you very much, Marcia.
Yeah.
Let me get you unmuted there.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm in the car traveling. I just wanted, can you hear me all right?
Where are you traveling, Natalie? Where are you right now?
I'm actually headed home from Washington, D.C., and I can offer a very different perspective from what all of you might have heard, because I happen to be live at the Capitol the whole time, the entire day. So I don't know if any of you are interested in what actually happened live. I
No,
can
but
offer that.
what we actually heard, it's what we saw.
None of what you heard on the mainstream media is what you thought. I was there with someone, and I also spent 2 hours at lunch with a signal intel officer who had more intel. What you don't know is that they bust.
Oops, she might be driving. You might have. Okay, let's try somebody else. We've kind of lost her for a moment there. Somebody else got their hand in the air. I saw another hand in the air. Where did it go? Was it down here? Was it Hillary? Oh no, here it's DJ. Hi DJ, where are you? What city are you in?
I'm in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to thank you for being really authentic with us and showing us how heated, how that really warmed you, as you said, that topic. This is, as I was watching what unfolded yesterday, it was, for me, I felt just a great sadness. And it was knowing that for 4 years, this has been building, that something would happen. And we have heard.
Like we weren't warned. I mean,
No.
we're fully warned.
Yeah. And
So
it also.
Unbelievable. And frightening, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to interject something for a moment, DJ. It reminded me of two things. When I was a little girl, those of you who heard me give a speech on, ironically enough, I think it was called Happiness, just a few months ago for Shift Network, I talked a lot about how when I was a little girl, I used to go to the Capitol in Sacramento with my father, who was an assemblyman. And how in those days he would work across the aisle. They were great friends with members of the opposite party. And I also remember the day that he was a lawyer, and I also remember the day in our small town he was in a courtroom, and a disgruntled client on the other side of the divorce or whatever came in with a gun and shot at him and the judge, and how he had to dive under a desk. So these things are real. I remember from my own childhood the good parts and the terrifying parts. So this all triggered the heck out of me. Go ahead, DJ. Go ahead.
I've noticed that I've also had okay, where did that come from, and not moved forward with, okay, how do I say no to that? And it's, for me, your authenticity as you were expressing yourself gave a little bit of light inside that kind of said, okay, there's a shift happening now.
Oh, good.
And it took, yes, it took what happened yesterday to have that come forward. Why? Only God knows.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it was the Epiphany. I do think there's a point there. I think something was happening astrologically and in other ways, just to support some kind of forward movement. Maybe we've been stuck a while in the darkness, really in the darkness. Any of us that sat around and were complicit with this kind of insane demagoguery and belittling and mockering behavior and didn't say anything. Didn't want to offend your uncle, right? Or your neighbor, or you're just like me, right? You didn't want to offend somebody. Yeah, we're all just afraid to stand up and say, that's not right. That behavior despite the, I love your policies maybe, but I can't, the behavior is abhorrent. It's just abhorrent. And then that, as we can see, if you allow somebody to behave that way, they just start to behave that way more and more. It gets more and more outrageous, more and more outrageous. Thank you so much, DJ, for participating. And Kathy, you had your hand in the air. Kathy Gabrielson, hi. Hi. Hold on, you're muted.
Yes, just kind of still shaking. I had a hard time sleeping last night myself, and even just being on the call and feeling the energy and remembering it and thinking about it. It just, I feel I've been so silent because I've been so afraid to, ripple the waters in my family and with my friends, and always kind of just silenced myself and nodded my head in different situations. And, now is, I'm embarrassed, of my behavior. I really am embarrassed of not speaking my truth. I'm so embarrassed,
This will empower us all.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if not now, when,
Good point. Yeah. All right. Well,
really sad.
oh, Maureen, one last caller here. Hi, Maureen. Where are you?
Hi, I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. And first, I just want to echo everybody's appreciation. I deeply appreciate you coming and making this time and being so brave and authentic. And I also find it interesting, like you were mentioning about the Epiphany. And I kept thinking about the fact that this past year we've been challenged as we've had to go through a collective dark night. And we're being challenged to raise our vibration and make changes that aren't necessarily comfortable. And it's sort of been a buildup from all realms in a sense. And it's like you said, on the Epiphany, it was an epiphany, and the darkness can't hide anymore. And it's challenging on a personal level, so that, like you said, to carry it forward in the big things and in the little things. When you see something, say something. Don't hide under a bushel anymore.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And you just reminded me of a story I haven't thought about in a million years. It's in probably my first or second book. I was, like so much of my life, I was disabled and laying flat on my back with a back injury, and had been for a couple of weeks. And I started to have these, I'd wake up at midnight and there'd be this darkness up in the corner. And I was young, and I'd come out of a period of, I was raised Catholic, but I'd gotten very anti, so many of us do in high school. And I was still very anti. And I said to my husband, I woke him up and I said, I need for you to, there's a mission. We were living in Santa Ynez, and there's a Catholic mission there. I said, there's a mission downtown, and will you go down there in the first thing in the morning and get a crucifix? And he goes, what for? And I said, because I just have know that this crucifix is going to get rid of that darkness I can sense up there in that corner. And I literally had fights with this thing for 3 or 4 nights in a row, brandishing. I even sent him back to get some holy water. I went from being anti, I went way over to the other side real fast. I need a crucifix and some holy water right now. And I'd spray it, and I'd brandish this crucifix, and it worked. I was actually going through a big moment of darkness. I really was. They were trying to get me, and I fought it off. By God, I fought it off. But it was tough. It was a tough battle. And then the next thing I knew, my back injury suddenly disappeared. Just overnight. What were you going to say? You got your hand in the air there. Is it Youssef?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that. One of the things that I have learned through my religious practice is that the Prophet Muhammad says, if you see something immoral and wrong, if you can't change it, you have to change it with your hand. If you don't, you have to change it with your tongue. It means speak up. If not, at least you change it in your heart. So what he meant with this is everybody try that practice. We collectively, we can change to a positive energy, collectively, even though we don't have the power to change in our hand or in our speech, but at least we have to be not agreed with what's happening in our heart. In that way, we can add our positive energy to the collective positive energy with that intention to change that negative energy. And so,
I understand what you're saying, Yusuf.
thank you.
Yeah, you got some. I don't know if you're teaching, but are you teaching now? I mean, currently in your life?
Yes, I do. I have been teaching as a professor in Denmark for many years, and I was practicing.
You're meant to teach.
Yes,
And it feels like you're meant to teach using a lot of the, as you have just spoken here a couple times, a lot of the wisdom of your own tradition. You know, very wise. Middle America doesn't know much about it, but it's an extremely wise tradition. It has great truths that we could sure use. So yeah, I think you're going to be doing some of that here for the rest of your life, feels like.
thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, great being with you guys. Thank you so much for supporting me as I came out of the closet here. And really enjoyed being with you all. And let's onward and upward, huh? Let's really stand up for what we believe in. And hope to see. Oh, before we part, I got to tell you, I've got a course starting next week, my medical intuition class. I really hope you'll all come to it. Maybe one of my helpers will drop the link to it down here in the chat window. Take a second. We'll take a second to do that. If you haven't heard about it, I'm pretty excited about it. It's a 7-week class, and you can come live or you can watch it later. It's going to be probably the best thing I've ever taught, frankly, because I just keep getting wiser and wiser, right? And I'm pretty excited about it. I think just the title might be a little limiting, because if you can medical intuit, you can do anything, because you can see just inside other people's bodies. But to do that, you have to also be able to see their soul and their personality. You have to be able to see a few things on a bunch of levels. So it'll be really exciting. I'll use a lot of audience volunteers, that's you guys, to demonstrate, because that's the best way to teach it, is using actual live volunteers without disclosing too much about their medical condition, so that we can discern it. This is all about building your discernment, building your gifts. Everybody has gifts. Every single one of you have gifts that just need to be opened. You came in with them. You just need to get them opened. So come check it out. It's deborahking.com/medical. It's really easy to get to. It's deborahking.com/medical, and it starts next week. All right. Thank you again for joining me. Until I see you then, you guys take care.